Greetings, Gilliam the Rogue here, once again, back with an Elder Scrolls Online Let's Talk segment. It's pretty cold here in Wisconsin. I'm still wearing this. We'll be streaming next Monday, January 8th, so if you're late to this and this is in the future, sorry, you missed it. But I'll be taking this off, as well as discussing the new patch that was just released. We're getting the PTS on Monday, that 8th of January, so really exciting stuff, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the Dragonknight class with an Elder Scrolls Online Let's Talk video. So, today we're going to be looking over Draconic Power, which offers a lot of really fantastic utility and a little bit of damage for the Dragonknight. However, most of this is going to fit primarily into the tanking aspect of the class. We're going to have a lot of utility in here. We're going to have some CC, we're going to have mitigation for ourselves, we're going to have healing for ourselves, and we're also going to get some damage. So this is a really powerful skill line filled with a lot of really powerful abilities. In fact, each and every one of them fits somewhere into the game. Some of them are really strong, some of them could use a little bit of reworking. I'll be giving feedback along, as well as explaining how these scale, best ways to use them, interesting things that people might not realize, stuff like that. So as always, we're going to be starting off with our passive abilities, and our first one is a really nice but simple one, and that is Iron Skin. Increases the amount of damage you can block by 10%. So this is going to apply to your block mitigation, meaning that block mitigation is already by 50%, so this is going to give you 5% damage mitigation while blocking. So 10% of that 50%, it applies to your base. That's 5% damage mitigation while blocking. Really helpful, just helping shrug off damage all more while blocking. You don't need to be a tank to utilize this because everyone blocks. It works in PvE and PvP, especially well in PvP, just because it helps lower off damage. Block is one of the strongest defensive tools in the game because simply holding right click gives you 50% base damage mitigation. As a DK, it gives you 55% at base with this passive. Fantastic, really strong. Wouldn't really change anything about it. It really makes the Dragonknight feel a little bit more tanky. They can hold their ground a little bit more efficiently, and applies to magic, physical, any sort of damage. Could be range, could be melee, does not matter. Really phenomenal passive. Next we have is Burning Heart, and what this is going to do is anytime one of these abilities is active and has a duration associated with it, it's going to give us 12% increased healing received. So this will not go to other allies. So like if you heal them with a skill from, let's say you use Cauterize from Ardent Flame, you're not going to get that 15% or the 12% from Burning Heart on them. This will only proc when you're healing yourself, as well as when allies are healing you. So this is a really strong passive, especially in PvE for tanking and PvP for anything. 12% healing received is huge in terms of effective power. In fact, it's almost as strong as the singular CP passive, where you have to spend 100 points into quick recovery to get 15%. To get 12%, you have to spend 56, so it's worth 56 champion points if you want to break it down into that effective like translation or whatever, or you put it into a ratio or something like that. So it's really efficient in terms of what it is enabling to us. It is very impactful. One of the strongest healing passives in the game, making Dragoknights insanely hard to kill, either they be solo or in a group, because again, if you heal yourself, you're still receiving that healing, so that'll be buffed. So it's really strong. So the things that have duration associated with them are going to be Spiked Armor, Dragon Blood, Reflective Scale, and then I'm not sure, let's check if Inhale does that. So you can kind of tell when it's active. We're going to activate Spiked Armor. We're going to look. It's not going to be recorded as a buff, but it will be recorded as a heal. So what I can do is I can put on a Resto Staff on our back bar, and we'll see what healing gets amplified when we swap to this bar. So let's go in Asylum. Let's find an Asylum Restoration Staff. Let's pop that baby on. Make sure we have the same exact stats on both bars regardless of what our stats look like. So yep, we got that. So we're going to put on, let's use a heal over time. Let's see. So Spiked Armor has a duration. We're going to test if Talons works. We're going to test if Inhale works. Put all these abilities on our bar, and we're going to test every single one of them and see which one of these skills applies to our healing. So at a base, we'll cast Regeneration. We'll see a 592 heal. Now we're going to activate Spiked Armor. and it goes up to 663. So that applies to that. Really, really strong. Now we're going to let Spiked Armor's duration fade, and then we're going to test with another ability. We're going to see if the 4-second immobilization counts as an active Draconic Power skill. So again, we're going to cast this skill. We're going to see back down to 592, activate Talons. Even though it has a duration associated, not going to proc it. Now we're going to cast Reflective Scales. Reflective Scales is a buff that's going to apply to it. Dragon's Blood works the same way it works as a heal. So whenever I have this active, it's going to increase. And then we're going to test one more time with the Inhale thing. So we're going to see if Inhale procs that. Wait until our Dragon Blood fades because it's still applying to our heal over time from Rapid Regeneration because we still have this active skill. Now we're back down to 592. There it is. And now we're going to activate our Inhale skill. Boom. Now we jump up to 693. Oh, nope. Actually, nope. So even though we have Inhale active as a duration, so I activate the skill, nothing happens. Even if I manage to land damage with Inhale where it adds a 3.5 second delay, we'll talk more about the skill in a bit, my rapid regen still heals for 592. So the only things that are buffed are the only things that proc this Burning Heart passive are Spiked Armor, Dragon Blood, and Reflective Scales. So Dark Talons and Inhale and Leap will not. Even though some of these have a duration associated with them, does not mean that will proc the Burning Heart. So do keep that in mind. Now we'll finish putting our abilities proper on here. So, our next passive, or Burning Heart, really, really strong. Very, very big reason why the Dragonites are so hard to kill. Wouldn't really change anything with it because it really helps the Dragonite take stand out. The only thing I'd like is just to see for every healing increase or received or bonus, there is some sort of healing reduction attainable in-game, just so there's a counter to everything in the game. So you don't have some classes who are just so starkly powerful compared to everything else where you can't really do much to mitigate that power. So I just believe really strongly in checks and balances in terms of an overall health of the game. It doesn't always necessarily have to be the same exact thing because homogenization is the bane of diversity, so we don't necessarily need a class that just gives 12% boning heal reduction, but some source that is tangible in some sort of way that any class or some specific classes might be able to enact upon where they get a bonus or deal extra damage against targets who have really high healing received or something like that, because there's just a lot of healing received accessible in-game, and it plays a big reason in why there are so many unkillable builds or really, really hard to kill builds in Cyrodiil. But now we'll move on. Our next passive is called Elder Dragon, and what this is going to do is for each and every Draconic Power ability slot, we're going to get 5% bonus health recovery. Rather straightforward, so this will be multiplied by the amount of skills we have. So I have 5 on right now, so I get 25%, I put on a 6th, and I get 30%. So up to 30% healing received, or health recovery. Rather straightforward, works really, really well if you are running the Troll King set, or Orgnum Scales, or some sort of health recovery set. There are a lot of them in the game, and you can get some crazy high health recovery. Dragonites have by far the highest health recovery accessible because of Elder Dragon. So, really, really strong, especially is if you are an Orc or Khajiit, you're already going to have a big 20 or 30% bonus from that. So, yeah, Dragonite Argonian, or Dragonite Khajiit or Orc, going to have insane health recovery, going to be really hard to kill in PvP, really, really strong, stacks additively with the other health recovery bonuses, not multiplicatively, so it's not as strong as it might seem, but hey, it's still a lot of fucking health recovery. So, be on the lookout for Dragonites with Troll King and stuff like that. They're really obnoxious to kill. Get that defile on them because they have a huge bonus to it if they're running these. Usually, a Dragonite is going to have at least one of these on their bar, so at least 5% health recovery. Really, really nice. Our last passive is another very straightforward but extremely powerful one, and that is Spiked or Scaled Armor. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us a passive 3,300 spell resistance, a huge increase to reducing damage of magic, fire, shock, and frost damage in the game by 5% for free. So this is going to apply to the current cap, which is 33,000 is the cap. So you'd need 10 of this passive to reach that. There is no more sources of this passive in the game, but it does allow the Dragonite to have the highest amount of spell resistance accessible to its base kit because it has free 5% damage mitigation in form of spell resistance to those specific attacks. really, really strong. It's a big reason why their spell resistance is always going to be higher than their physical resistance. Just really, really nice. Allows you to specialize with other CP allocations or other nodes in the CP tree, because you're going to be able to spend more points into Hardy rather than LD Defender, because you're going to already have a free 5% from that. Allows you to hit that 33k hard cap much quicker, allowing you to focus on other stats. So really, really strong. Very helpful in PvE and PvP, mainly in PvP against caster builds, not so much against stand builds, but in PvE, most of the trial damage in endgame, like hard mode veteran trials or veteran hard mode dungeons even, most of that damage is considered spell damage, so that's going to be reduced really, really strong. But now we're going to move into our active abilities. Our first one is our Source of Major Warden Resolve. Every class has it in their kit. This is the Dragonites, and a very, very strong one at that. So what it's going to do is this skill is going to have two parts. It's going to have the Major Warden Resolve. Whenever you activate it for 20 seconds, you're going to get that 8% damage mitigation against all physical or spell attacks. So physical includes physical damage, not bleeds, because bleeds ignore physical or resistance. It's going to apply to disease and poison, and then the spell resistance will apply to fire, shock, frost, and magic damage. So 8% damage mitigation across the board, aside from oblivion and bleed damage, stuff like that. Really, really nice. And then for 20 seconds, that means you can bar swap off of it. So let's take it off on this bar. Whoop, go away, virus, threat, and protection. I don't give a shit. So spiked armor, again, can be bar swapped off of. So if we look on this bar, I only have 33k resistance. And then we're going to activate our buff. Boom, I jump up to 8580 and 5280. Swap my bars, I still have the same amount. So, really, really nice. It means you only need to have it on one bar. The second part is a damage component, which returns magic damage to people who hit you with melee damage. So, it can't be ranged. It has to be 8 meters or under in range. It has to be a single target skill. Some AoE skills, like jabs and stuff, will proc this as well, but it needs to be melee damage. So, damage over time will not trigger this. The only exception is rapid strikes or jabs, because while they are considered damage over time, they are channeled melee attacks, so that will proc them. It's a little bit awkward because biting jabs and rapid strikes will not proc melee damage sets like Ravager and stuff like that, where it's like you're doing melee damage, but it will proc spiked armor, so that's a little bit awkward. It's either they should both proc or they should neither proc. So really, really strong as a Dragonite, especially against classes like the Templar, who are hitting you with a large amount of attacks in a very short window. You're going to proc a lot of pressure on them. Really, really strong as a tank and a Magicka build, because this magic damage will scale with max Magicka and spell damage, as well as spell penetration and spell critical, because it can crit. Furthermore, in the CP system, it will scale with Elemental Expert, Spell Erosion, Elfborn, and Master at Arms, because even if you're taking damage over time, like I said, it will still be considered direct damage. So a very, very powerful tool. It works in PvE or PvP. You don't necessarily need to be targeted, so if a boss does an AoE that's melee damage, you will return some damage to that boss. Very, very helpful. It also works in 4-man dungeons, especially when you're taking a lot of heat. You're going to help kill those enemies while being tankier. Really, really nice. But now we'll look at our morphs. First morph is called Hardened Armor. All that's going to happen is we're going to gain a damage shield equivalent to 15% of our max health for 2.5 seconds after activation. Rather straightforward. That extra shield will scale in size with the Bastion node in CP system, up to 25% bonus effectiveness. Really, really strong. So that's going to scale with your max health for that shield. However, 15% of your max health for 2.5 seconds is not all that great. I really wish that the damage shield lasted the 20 seconds, because 15% of your max health is really not all that great. Maybe you could cap it at 10 seconds, similar to the Sork's Ward, because most of the time, Zenimax's like damage shields should only last 6 to 10 seconds. Well, Hardened Armor is a very small shield, so if we just increase the duration a little bit to at least 6 or 10 seconds, I feel like this would be a much more viable morph option. Otherwise, a lot of the times, you're going to activate this, get the shield, and before it can even be broken, it's going to dissipate. And even if you're in combat, it's going to break right away, because 15% of your max health is not a lot, unless you are a tank build, but even then, it will be cut in half by Battle Spirit. So, really don't like this morph, could use a little bit of love. But our other morph is called Volatile Armor, and what this is going to do is whenever we activate this, we are also going to do an AoE attack of spike damage, causing enemies to be hit in this 10 meters AoE, which is quite large, mind you, one of the largest AoEs in the game, will hit any enemy up to 60, causing them to take X magic damage over 10 seconds, so this will scale with Thaumaturge in the CP system rather than Master at Arms. Still going to scale with Magicka spell damage, spell crit, spell penetration, all that good stuff. The one thing that I'd like to see is change Volatile Armor to do fire damage, not magic damage. That applies to the magic damage return and the damage over time. DKs are all about fire damage. You are, like, even the animation is it's all fiery and molten. Why does it do magic damage? It should do fire damage. Fix that, skill would be really, really great. And then again, just make Hardened Armor a little bit better in terms of duration, or maybe keep the duration roughly the same but increase the max health. You could do a lot with it. But those are the two morph options. Usually always going to be taking Volatile Armor. Volatile Armor also very powerful for helping get Nightblades out of stealth, because again, it is that AoE. I can take this morph and demonstrate. Boom, we see that massive spike of sprays around me, or the massive spray of spikes around me. 10 meters is no joke. I'm able to hit the target from very, very far away, so a very phenomenal morph option, usually the one I will suggest for endgame PvE and PvP. Now we're going to go to our next skill, Dark Talons, one of the strongest Dragonknight utility skills in terms of tanking and PvP. Really, really strong. This skill is going to scale with our max Magicka, spell damage, spell critical, and spell penetration as it deals magic damage. Again, wish it did fire damage, but hey, it's going to scale with the same stuff. Elemental Expert, Spell Erosion, Elfborn, and Master at Arms, because it is direct damage. So Dark Talons is a 6 meters AoE, PB AoE, that means personal or player based, so it's going to go around you, not a targeted location. I activate it, and in the 6 meters, anything that is in that will be hit by magical dragony claws, locking them in place, immobilizing for 4 seconds, and also dealing that direct magic damage. Furthermore, enemies that are hit with this ability can also have the Impale synergy prompted by allies. You cannot prompt your own synergy. This will scale off the synergizers, so whoever is hitting the synergy stats, it's going to scale with either stamina or Magicka, whatever is highest, and then based on whatever is highest. If max Magicka, then Magicka spell damage, spell crit, and if max stamina, then stamina, weapon damage, and weapon crit. However, it will always use spell penetration because it deals magic damage, and it's always going to scale with Elemental Expert, Spell Erosion, Elfborn, and Master at Arms in the CP system for that synergy. Very, very nice as a utility skill, both in PvE and PvP. The Impale synergy feels great to use. It does a lot of burst damage, and the skill in general is just really, really nice. Again, they can demonstrate, lock that enemy in place for 4 whole seconds, making sure they can't move, and I can keep locking them unless they have snare immunity from dodge roll or shuffle or forward momentum or elusive mist. So really, really nice. Now we'll look at our morphs. Our first morph is called Burning Talons, and what this is going to do is it's going to convert the magic damage into flame damage, still going to stun them for immobilize for 4 seconds, but furthermore it will add a 4-second damage over time feature. This will scale with the same stats, but instead of Master at Arms, it'll scale with Thaumaturge in the CP system. Very, very nice for PvE DPS if you're trying to do a lot of AoE. Granted, it is very, very high in cost, and it only has a 6 meters AoE. I would love to see the magic cost come down for Burning Talons or the radius come up. Either or would really help out the Magicka Dragonknight feel a little bit more stronger in AoE situations. They already have some decent AoE damage, but just giving Burning Talons either a cost reduction or a meter increase in terms of radius would really, really help in PvP or in PvE without hindering PvP too much, because most of the times in PvP, we're going to be taking Choking Talons, and that's our other morph. So instead of damage over time, what this is going to do is for the 4-second duration, enemies will be afflicted with minor maim, helping reduce their damage by 15%. If I take this morph, we're going to notice that that scales up in duration to 7 seconds. Very, very helpful. So I can apply this to the target. We see the minor maim applying right next to the immobilize. It will last longer than the immobilize, and furthermore, this minor maim will apply to target targets who are immune to immobilization. So it's a very powerful tool, helping the Dragonknight reduce the damage that those targets deal by 15% for the 7 seconds. It can be purged, keep in mind, but still very, very nice in both PvE and PvP. So if you're a tank, you usually take Choking Talons. If you're a DPS, you take Burning Talons. In PvP, you're usually always going to take Choking Talons if you use the skill. Very, very strong. Immobilizes are insanely powerful in PvP. Minor Maim is very powerful in PvP, so it's just a great skill. Plus, you have that utility of the synergy. Phenomenal, phenomenal skill. Would not change much about it other than the Burning Challenge change, which we just talked about. Next, we have Dragon's Blood, a rather awkward skill at base, but we have some really nice morph options. So, what this is going to do is it's going to cost a whopping 4,300 Magicka at base. This is without cost reduction or anything, but very, very expensive skill. And what it's going to do is, when we activate it, we're going to heal for 37% of our missing health. When I don't have a skill active on my bar, that's only going to be 33%. So the reason why this is higher is because I have some CP in. Let's take that out of Blessed. And we're back down to 33%. So that's the base. It will be affected by percent healing, as we just saw. That 15% from Blessed did apply to Dragon's Blood, so it will scale with both Blessed and Quick Recovery in the CP system. Again, pop those points in, as well as the Quick Recovery node right here. That will increase the amount of healing we get out of this. This skill can crit as well, so it's going to scale off of our spell crit as well as our missing health. So maximum health will increase the amount of healing we get out of this, because the more health you have, that means the more missing you have, there's going to be a larger gap. So you're going to get a bigger heal out of it whenever you activate it. However, if you're at 100% health, we notice I get no heal because it's 33% of my missing health, not my current health, or my max health. So it does have that issue where you're not going to be able to just cast this and get a heal. You're going to have to take damage. So it's going to be really weak unless you're lower health. The lower health you are, the bigger the heal is. It can crit though, so it's really, really strong. If you're at 10% health and it manages to crit, you're probably going to reach full in PvE, and in PvP it'll probably be a little bit lower because Battle Spirit, stuff like that, and Defiles. But really, really helpful. Furthermore, for 20 seconds you'll also gain Major Fortitude, increasing your health recovery by 20%. Keep in mind that this will also proc that Burning Heat passive for 20 seconds, so very, very nice in terms of healing for tanks, as well as DPS in PvE, or in PvP. So Dragon Blood, pretty nice. At its base, we're probably not going to be using it too much because our morphs are really, really strong. So we'll look at our morphs. Our first morph is called Green Dragon Blood. And what this is going to do is, all it's going to do is add Major Endurance and Minor Vitality to that Major Fortitude. So instead of just giving 20% health recovery for the 20 seconds, we're also going to get 20% stamina recovery and 8% bonus healing received. So this is a really nice utility skill. 20 seconds of health recovery, stamina recovery, and healing received bonuses. Really nice, helping the Dragonknight get a lot of efficiency out of the skill in terms of the major minor buff system. Very, very nice. Our other morph, however, is called Coagulating Blood, and what this is going to do is it's going to add some scaling mechanisms on top of that 33% missing health. So on top of healing us for 33% of our missing health, it's also going to heal us based on our max magicka and spell damage. So this healing will scale with max magicka, spell damage, spell critical, and furthermore in the CP system, it'll still scale with that quick recovery and blessed. But again, since it has the two-part healing mechanism, it's just going to heal far more than Green Dragon Blood, because it's going to heal for a flat value and then your missing health value. So I can activate it, and even at 100% health, I get a 4.7k crit. That's in no gear at all other than a staff. I've not spent CP, so you can get some really big heals with Coagulating Blood. This is almost always going to be the morph we're going to be taking in PvP, as well as Magicka tanks or Magicka DPS in PvE, if you're going to even use the skill. However, as a tank in PvE, I usually suggest Green Dragon Blood because it adds a lot of that juicy efficiency with that minor vitality and the major fortitude and endurance, so it's really, really helpful. But Coagulating Blood is still really strong in PvE for tanks as well, because it's just, hey, more healing, more self-healing, you're going to be more self-sufficient. So great morph, usually outclasses Green's Dragon Blood. I do wish that Green Dragon Blood would scale the same way that Coagulating Blood but instead with your max stamina and weapon damage. Give stamina a little bit of healing for the Dragonknight. I feel like that would solve a lot of issues. And then add a little bit of flavor to coagulating blood so it doesn't feel like it's getting the short end of the stick. Maybe add a heal over time with it or something like that. Or the more damage you... the more damage you have taken, you heal more because, like, your blood is coagulating. It's clotting up really quickly, so you're rejuvenating a little bit faster. So it maybe have it, like, 40% of your missing health, or increase that base just a tiny little bit to give this morph a little bit more flavor if we gave Green Dragon Blood the stamina and weapon damage scaling, but you don't necessarily need to. So those are my suggestions for the skill. Now we'll look at Reflective Scale. This is a reflect skill. What it's going to do is it's going to cost magicka, but it's not going to scale with anything at base. But what it's going to do is you flex your scales around you, and for 6 seconds you are going to reflect up to 4 projectiles back at the target. So this is going to be ranged attacks. It will not be melee attacks. So it has to be over 10 meters or 9 meters. It has to be a projectile single target. So AoE ranged attacks like Endless Hail or something like that are not going to proc Reflective Scale. It has to be single target or target based. Will not work with meteors. However, really unfortunate. I kind of wish that would come back. And there's a big issue right now with reflective scales where this 4 projectile limit is really, really buggy. A lot of times it'll be eaten up before you necessarily think it has, and as well as really weak attacks will also consume this. So reflective scale is really not in a good spot because its duration is really short, and on top of a short duration, it has a cap of projectiles. What I'd really like to see is have reflective scale no longer either have the target or like the amount of capped projectiles, increase it to maybe 6, but have it no longer reflect light attacks, only heavy attacks, and then harder hitting abilities like lethal arrow, poison injection, crystal frag, stuff like that. You also cannot reflect things like birds from the Warden skill or Force Pulse, so it's really weak against Wardens and Sorcerers other than their crystal frags and stuff like that. So it's just in a really weak spot. I would love to see some stuff come to this skill, but hey, it is there, and it has a really high magicka cost too. So I would really like to see some reworks to reflective scale, bring back the good old reflect, maybe have it work like streak, where the more times you cast it successively, I can't speak today, the more expensive the skill comes, so you don't just have the DK spamming his wings all day long. Haha, your range damage is useless against me. So if we'd have less of that, increase the cost if you cast it again within 4 or 5 seconds, and then remove the projectile limit or something like that. I feel like that would really help out the Dragonknight in outnumbered and just fitting more into a utility skill line where this skill would be much more viable. But now we'll look at our morphs. Our first morph is called Reflective Plate. What this is going to do is while active, we are going to get Minor Ward, giving us 1320 spell resistance for 20 seconds. Now that Reflective Plate again will proc that Burning Heart for the 20 seconds, really helpful. But since we have other skills like Volatile Armor and Coagulating Blood, we don't necessarily need this morph to proc that, but you do get 2% damage mitigation against magic, fire, shock, and frost damage, so it does help a little bit, but really not all that great. Our other morph is called Dragon Fire Scale, and what this is going to do is anytime you reflect damage from those projectiles, it's going to be increased. We take this morph and it goes up to a whopping 35% damage bonus. So if you manage to reflect a Sork's Crystal Frags, they're probably going to eat dirt, because it does a lot of damage with this modifier. However, the way that the reflected projectiles work is while they don't scale off your magic and spell damage because they scale off whoever is shooting you, so the harder they hit, the harder you're going to reflect, they will use your spell penetration and your spell critical. So it can crit, but it's going to use your spell crit, and unless it's a melee attack or a poison injection or like a physical attack, then it'll use your weapon crit. It's really, really awkward. I've seen some conflicting results, so if you have if you have other data proving otherwise, please let me know in the comments section, because this is a really hard skill to test. There's so many variables to be looked at. But usually I've seen that it scales with your weapon or spell crit based on whatever the skill scales with. So if you're using Lethal Arrow, that scales with weapon crit, so it'll use your weapon crit. The Dragonites, not the casters. So really, really awkward. Again, it will use your spell penetration, not theirs. So it's a little bit awkward. But hey, it gives you some nice damage back at whoever's casting you. Relatively nice in a 1v1 against some classes like a Magic and Nightblade who has like most range damage, or like a Magisork with their C-frags. But in open world and outnumbered situations, the limit of 4 projectiles in a 6-second duration is very, very low compared to how many things you're being hit by. So I would just really like to see this skill get some love in some way, shape, or form. But hey, those are our morphs. Usually going to be taking Dragonfire scale because 35% bonus reflect damage versus 2% magic damage reduction. You see a clear winner in that situation. But our last active ability is called Inhale, and this is a really fun one. This is going to scale with our max magicka, spell damage, spell critical, and spell penetration as it deals magic and flame damage. Again, wish all of it was flame damage. It doesn't make sense that the Dragonknight has magic damage. They are a Dragonknight, should be fire, but hey, whatever. It does magic and flame damage, still going to scale with the same stats as I just said. Furthermore, in the CP system, going to scale with Elemental Expert, Spell Erosion, Elfborn, and Master at Arms because it is direct damage. So what's going to happen is you channel your draconic energy to suck in the air around you, and then after a certain amount of time it's going to explode. But on that initial inhale, that big suck, we are going to deal initial hit damage. Again, it's going to scale with that Master at Arms in the CP system, dealing X magic damage to nearby enemies in an 8 meters AoE, quite large, as well as healing you for 115% of that damage caused. So it's going to have some lifesteal. So the harder that initial hits, the bigger heal you get. Again, the heal cannot crit unless the base hit crits, so it's not going to be able to double crit, but we see quite a lot of healing out of this. If I can ever get a heal crit out of this, we'll notice. See, Inhale crit for 904, but Inhale healed for 139, so it cannot crit as the heal, but if the base hit crits, then the heal essentially crits. Really, really straightforward, very helpful. Means that a lot of sets are going to amplify this potency. I'm not going to talk about them here, but there is a lot of ways to get Inhale's heal through the roof in PvE and PvP. Really, really strong. But after 2.5 seconds, if you manage to inhale on an enemy, you are going to explode for even more. And this time it's going to be fire damage again. I wish the inhale was fire damage, but hey, it's not. So again, activate the skill, deal initial hit damage, heal myself, and then after 2.5 seconds, boom, get that big explosion. So again, in an 8 meters AoE, I suck in. 2.5 seconds later, if I manage to hit someone on the suck, I explode outwards. So really, really cool, very dynamic skill, very, very fun to use in PvE and PvP. Really, really nice. However, it does have an insanely high magicka cost. So now we're going to look at our morphs to see if some of this is alleviated. So first morph option is called Deep Breath, and what this is going to do is anytime you hit someone with the initial hit, not the exhale, so the inhale, you are going to interrupt any casting they are doing. So this is a really, really strong skill for tanks as well as PvP. So if you're a Dragonknight and you're walking into the middle of a group and you want to make sure their casters can't get off the clap heal or the crystal blast or whatever is derpy cast animation they're doing, you can use this to interrupt them. So it's a really, really nice option for PvP as well as tanks in PvE, because a lot of times there's going to be large groups of enemies. You got your archers doing your bombard or the acid spray. Those have cast times in PvE. Sometimes a healer will be using repentance or giving rapid regeneration. So you want to be able to cast or interrupt a lot of these abilities, and sometimes you don't necessarily have the option to get right up in their face. There's 50 enemies, 2 of them are casting spells in a sea of enemies. You can't tab target it to bash them. Don't worry, cast Deep Breath, boom, interrupted. Really, really nice. Furthermore, if you manage to interrupt an enemy, they will be set off balance and stunned for 2 seconds. Really, really strong, giving you some CC, giving you that interrupt, that ranged AoE interrupt, so it's really, really strong. I really love this morph. So just, again, initial hit has an interrupt. If it interrupts, it stuns and sets off balance for 2 seconds. Phenomenal, phenomenal skill, helping in both PvE and PvP. Our other morph is called Draw Essence, and what this is going to happen is for every enemy you hit with the exhale, so you're going to have to hit with the inhale, after the exhale goes off, every enemy you hit, you're going to get 10% of that magicka cost back
up to 6 enemies. So that means you're going to get up to 60% of that magicka cost. We'll take this morph and we'll notice that that magicka will not scale with us. So it's capped at 60% of the magicka cost. So that means you're only spending 40% effectively if you manage to hit 6 enemies with the exhale. So what you can do is, if you're in a large group situation, I can cast Draw Essence. If I hit 1 enemy, I get that magicka refund. But what else I can do is I can hit 1 enemy and then run off here. So I activate it here, I hit that one, but then I hit these. Since I'm hitting them all, I'm getting that 60% of that magicka cost back. So you don't necessarily have to hit 6 with the inhale, it's only with the exhale. So it's a really, really nice morph option, giving you some magicka management back. However, cost reduction is going to bring down that efficiency, because again, it's 10% of the ability's cost returned, not a flat value. So what I would really like to see is have Draw Essence give you more magicka back than it costed if you manage to hit more enemies successfully. So it would just give a lot more magicka management to the Dragonknight. It would make Draw Essence a very viable morph option, because right now our other morph, that AoE interrupt, stun, and off balance, is far superior than Draw Essence, because Draw Essence resource management is not enough to justify it, because you're giving up a lot of operational loss from that stun, the off balance, the interrupt, all that juicy stuff from inhale. So Draw Essence is kind of in an awkward spot. I would really like to see it give either 100% of the magicka cost back, so if you hit 6 enemies, you get all of your magicka back, or allow it to give a flat amount where it gives a little tiny more magicka back than it costed with to begin with. So you get the infinite sustain, but only if you're hitting really large groups of enemies. So it would really help the Dragonknight feel better in outnumbered situations, getting that resource management back. But again, that would only be for Magi DKs, so Stam DKs still wouldn't be able to do that, so it would have some diversity and counterplay, etc. But those are our active abilities. Now we'll go into our final ability, our ultimate. So I need to get enough ultimate to show how badass this skill is. It is Dragon's Leap. So what this is going to do is it's going to scale with, again, as an ultimate would, whatever stats are highest. If your stamina is higher, it'll be stamina, weapon damage, and weapon crit. And if your magicka is higher, magicka, spell damage, and spell crit. However, it's always going to deal physical damage at base. That doesn't mean our morph options will be the same. So physical damage all the time, so it'll always use physical penetration. Furthermore, in the CP system at base, it will scale with mighty, piercing, precise strikes, and master at arms, because it is direct damage. So again, what we're going to do is it's going to have 125 ultimate cost. It's going to have a 6.5 meters AoE radius, kind of awkward, and it's going to have a 20 meters range. I kind of would like to see the range go up to 28 or higher, because you can very easily outrange this skill if it is casted on you, but it is an ultimate. It is undodgeable, but it is blockable. So what you're going to do is you're going to launch yourself at the enemy, dealing X physical damage to all enemies in that 6.5 meters AoE, knocking them back and stunning them for 2 seconds. So I can demonstrate here. Let's get just out of range and then get in range. Boom. I look like a badass. I jump to him like Thor with some cool-ass wings, and I deal damage. If he was a player or a CCable mob, he would be knocked back and stunned for 2 seconds. Really, really great. It feels great to use. It's very strong. However, it does have very high counterplay. It can be outranged because it has a very short range, and it can be blocked. Again, it cannot be dodged though, because it is an AoE, so you can't dodge it. If you do, you're going to get fucked up. So very, very nice. Especially good for burst damage, because it has a relatively high tooltip once you're in proper gear in CP. But now we'll look at our morphs. Our first morph is called Take Flight, and what this is going to do is it's going to reduce the cost to 110 ultimate instead of 125, so 15 ulti cost out the window. It's going to increase the range to 28 meters, so this kind of fixed what I was talking about earlier. However, I really think that 28 meters should be base, and this should go maybe like 32, 34. And then it's going to increase the damage as well. So it goes from 4.5k to almost 5k. So it's just going to increase the coefficient, making it scale really, really nice. This is the morph that stamina DPS take, because it deals physical damage. Going to get that really nice boost of efficiency. So Take Flight, really good for Stam DKs. Really nice burst, low ultimate cost, AoE, ranged, really, really nice. Wouldn't really change much about it other than giving that base range to the base, and then making Take Flight a little bit longer. But our other morph is called Ferocious Leap, and what this is going to do is it's going to convert it into flame damage. So instead of always scaling with the the CP stuff, which was before Mighty, Piercing, Precise Strikes, and Master at Arms, now it's going to scale with Master at Arms, still direct damage, Spell Erosion, Elemental Expert, and Elfborn, because it's going to do flame damage. So that flame damage is going to give Magicka builds an option to deal damage. It's going to deal roughly the same as our base, so it's not going to get that extra scaling that Take Flight will. A little bit awkward that Stamina gets an extra burst versus Magicka, but we also gain a damage shield for 100% of our max health for 6 seconds. I take this morph, and that scales to 103% of our max health for 6 seconds. Let's just make sure that Blessed is not applying to that, so I take that out, and it is still 103. So 103% of our max health for 6 seconds. What that's going to scale with is obviously our max health, and well as the Bastion CP system. I can put those points in there, and that will jump up to 128%. So really, really nice. That means it's going to be additive, not multiplicative, with that bonus, because it was just 25% plus that 3%. So without it, we jump down to 103%. So relatively straightforward, gives us a big old damage shield, very, very helpful. However, in PvP, this will be cut in half to only 50% of your health because Battle Spirit. So the other thing that's nice about it, though, in Battle Spirit is that you do get that extra 5k health or so from Battle Spirit. So while you do get that 50% efficiency, you do get a little bit higher max health to get a bigger shield. So Ferocious Leap, very, very nice in PvP, not so good in PvE because as a tank, you're going to be better off with our Earthen Heart ultimate. We'll talk about that in the next video, but really, really nice ultimates. We got one for Magicka DPS and Stamina DPS. You can use them as a tank, as either playstyle in PvP too. Lots of burst damage. Look out for those leap and DKs. They're going to be doing tons of damage if you aren't blocking, getting ready for it. So it does have a very easy telegraph, though, so do keep that in mind. I would, again, like to just see that range go up, maybe increase the speed of it so it has a little bit less time, because we noticed how long that jump was. You have plenty of time to react unless you've already BCC'd. So single target, a lot of times what Dragonites will do is they're going to use a skill from their Earthen Heart that's going to stun them from a range. So they're going to have to be close. They're not going to be able to do this from super far away, but they're going to be able to get up close and then leap. Or use their other skill from Earthen Heart, which can also be casted from 28 meters away, stun them and then leap. Or just so they get that guaranteed burst, but you do sacrifice your stun and knock up if you do that. So there's a little bit of issues with that from a balance point. It's very counterable, but it does do a lot of burst if used properly. So that was the Draconic Power skill line. Very, very simplistic stuff in here. We don't have a lot of awkward scaling. Really, really great skills. Again, a lot of great stuff for PvP. Some really nice stuff for PvE too. But really, really nice, straightforward, to the point, very great skills. So wouldn't change too much about this other than what we talked about. Just a really nice, easy to use, easy to understand, and easy to apply skill set. Fantastic. I think every class should have stuff like this where it's just, oh, hey, I put this on, I get some stuff. Great. So, again, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Again, there's not a lot of crazy, interesting stuff in here, but there is some stuff like the Dragonfire scale where it scales with awkward stuff that you might not necessarily understand and stuff like that. So hopefully you got something out of it. Last, we are going to be talking about Earthen Heart, and then that will finish off all of our ESO Let's Talks for classes. Again, I'm not going to touch Warden until they get a rework. Who knows? Maybe that'll happen in update 17, 18, 19. Whoever knows when that'll happen, or if it does at all. Otherwise, if it doesn't happen for probably a year, I'll just go through the skill line kind of half-assed and go talk about it. But again, Monday, January 8th, I'll be streaming when the PTS goes live. I don't know when that'll be. It'll probably be later in the day because we don't know when it's going to go live. I don't really like sticking to a schedule. It really limits my ability to get really engaged with it. If I feel like I'm forced to do something, I really can't put my all into it. So, yeah, not sure when. As for we're moving forward with ESO Let's Talk, I'm going to be talking about a lot of general combat application, how traits work, mathematics, stuff like that. So not 100% sure what video will be next. Probably something about resistances and mitigation of enemy types, explaining how that works, how to increase them, the cap of them, stuff like that. So look forward to that. We'll talk about weaknesses, resistances, what they mean. And then we're also going to have one talking about weapon and armor traits, the efficiency behind them, how they operate, as well as like how damage over time works between bar swapping and really convoluted stuff like that a lot of the player base really needs help with. So look forward to that in the future. Again, patch 17 or update 17, whatever you want to call it, is coming on Monday to the PTS, not live. We're going to get it in February. So lots of really cool stuff in there. Look forward to that. Hope you see you guys on Monday. But until next time, I'll see you guys around. The people that you see here on the screen are the ones who make videos like this one possible, helping me stay afloat financially in and out of game, giving me ideas for videos, helping with feedback, testing, all that sort of stuff. Thank you all so much for contributing to the community and not just myself, making this one of the greatest of them all. If you're interested in joining, check my link in the description for my Patreon or my Streamlabs. You can help me stay afloat there or donate to the NAPC server at Gilliam the Rogue. Really, thank you all so much for what you've done, helping me do this. Couldn't imagine where I'd be without you. So thank you all so much, and I'll see you guys next time.